And we are live. So, hi. For those of you who are going to be tuning in, so if you want to, Roberta and Cameron, if you want to share it to your page, and then we will get all people. Are you already done that?
Done
Cool.
and done.
Done it.
All right, done and done. Awesome. So, as soon as somebody tunes in, but yeah, so this is the 23rd episode of celebrating the brand ambassador, and I believe you guys are about the great thing about doing two people at once is that you can get a lot more people, also keeps it fun and conversational. So I think if I do the math, that's 56 brand ambassadors at this moment and counting. Looking forward to traveling around the world and getting more. So it's always fun to have people from different countries. So the first question I always like to ask everybody is what your current position is and what your responsibilities are. So Cameron, I will start with you. So what is your current role and what are your responsibilities?
Absolutely. Yep. So my name's Cameron George. I'm National Ambassador for Ardbeg here in the United States. Quite a unique position because it's actually the only Ardbeg dedicated role in the world. So even though my territory is the U.S., I'm oftentimes kind of lassoed into project by our maison or our home over in Scotland as well. I think my job has one of the coolest, I guess, calls to action. When this job was posted, it was posted with the moniker that this position was supposed to win hearts and mind both internally and externally on behalf of the brand.
No pressure.
No pressure, right? But what I take that to mean is to behave accordingly, educate on behalf of the brand, and make sure that education not only lands with bartenders and the service industry, but our friends over in the off-premise, our allies in the at our distributor, and then also internally in Moet Hennessy, because there's a lot of brands going on that are all kind of elbowing for their own little slice of the pie. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a very big position, to be like the only one and to kind of have to build relationships within your company. Is it because there's not as many brand ambassadors at Moet Hennessy, or is it about building love for Ardbeg within the company?
Well, I mean, Ardbeg is amongst Scottish whiskey distilleries still quite a small distillery, 1.4 million liters of spirit, only revived in 1997. So the brand is still for its scale is still relatively small, and the team is very small. We don't have the same the same footprint as even our sister brand Glenmorangie, which has stakeholders all across the world. There have been a couple of positions that were Ardbeg dedicated that we tried out in some other countries. They just ended up not necessarily working as well, because we do have a wonderful set of global ambassadors from the Glenmorangie and Ardbeg company. David Blackmore is our global ambassador on behalf of both brands.
Oh, very, very cool. And all right, Roberta, so your position and your responsibilities.
So I'm Italian, as you can tell, so I've got a background of an Italian culture, I will say. And I'm currently a global integrated manager for Martini. It means then on top of the duty and responsibility as a global ambassador, I'm acting as the expert in the field, helping the marketing consumers team. And also I'll make sure that the brand strategy plans, they becomes a platform for advocacy and education.
Very cool. Wow, very succinct. You've practiced that. That's pretty good. I've never had anybody be able to tell their role and such a big thing. You're like, nailed it.
It just is such a complex title. Then I had to learn what it is.
No, it's fantastic. So you kind of do a little bit of everything, but it's like you got it down to a succinct 2 sentences. The perfect bio. You only get 20 words. You nailed it. Okay, so being a brand ambassador, and Cameron, I didn't actually ask, how long have you been the brand ambassador?
Yeah, so I've been brand ambassador for Ardbeg for 3 years now.
Okay, and actually, before I get to this next question, what were you doing before you became the brand ambassador?
So I was still actively behind the bar. Bartending was and still is one of my absolute favorite times in my life. I spent so much time, just memorizing cocktails, understanding how to apply spirits, and I think that background actually led up perfectly for me taking a role like this, because Ardbeg is obviously a polarizing whiskey. Heavily peated whiskeys often are. So working with flavors like that became second nature to me. I was running a mezcal bar. I ran whiskey bars. I just ran, wonderful cocktail programs here in Washington.
Very, very cool. And I was gonna say, Roberta, you have a similar background. I mean, different, but similar. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, I've been working in bars as well before joining Martini as a brand ambassador. I was managing a bar termin in London, so an aperitivo bar, everything dedicated to, aperitivo and a coffee. It was a great experience as an Italian, and I've always been a kind of geeky bartender. So, a similar experience to Cameron. I always loved mixing cocktail and learn as much as possible about all the ingredients and I will say, the technicality behind the cocktails, so chemical reaction and structure, all these kind of things. So a geeky bartender.
I will say Termini was one of my absolute favorite programs. Like that was just one of my favorite experiences, getting to sit at the bar there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't think that's really nice. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure. Is it still there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. I have to make it a point the next time I'm in town. Okay. And how long have you been the brand? I know you've changed roles, but how long have you been with the company, Martini?
5 years.
5 years. All right. So becoming a brand ambassador obviously has tons of challenges, right? So one of the things I like to uncover in the show is, everybody thinks that brand ambassadors are just, people that love to drink and have corporate cards and fly around, just having a party all the time and having a great time. So what are a couple, like 2 or 3 challenges, things that you find challenging about the job, but that you've learned how to deal with, and you might want to share that best practice? Like, this used to be a problem, I still deal with it, but this is what I do to kind of, to get over it. For you, Roberta, we'll start with you.
Okay, this is a great question. So thank you for asking. And I think one of the first struggle was trying to find a balance. A balance between work and personal life, and also starting to work in the morning. I'm always saying I'm not a morning person, so from a night shift to 9 o'clock office timing it was quite challenging, just because my brain doesn't function really highly in the morning. So I had, took me a little bit of time to adjust. But I think the main struggle was trying to leave a corporate, obviously, because, working in a bar, and I work in the street bar as I work like in more structured hotel bar, but they are not such a company, they're not such big as a company as Bacardi, where you got many layers and a lot of people that they need to approve any kind of step. So, as a bartender and bar manager, you see a problem and then you fix it, immediately. While when you're working for a company, you always need to ask someone else to approve the step, or there is a little bit, everything is lower. Yeah. So I used to get really frustrated about, like, oh, this is so easy, why we don't do it? Let's just do it. But it was not so easy to do. And, with the time you understand that there are different timings, and you learn how to manage the stress and don't get, anxious anymore about how slow things can be.
So for you, and I totally get that, because everything moves much slower in a corporation than it does when you can just handle something yourself. So seeing a problem and you think, oh my God, this is such a easy solution, and now you have to. So what is your process now? Like, do you have to present it to your boss, or you just be like, this is not even worth bringing because nothing's going to happen, or a combination, or it's like, okay, this is a problem, I know it's going to take a while to fix, so I need to present it to this person, and then, they present it to that person. Like, what's the process for you? Do you see something you want to fix?
Is almost thinking ahead of the question that you're going to receive and the challenges you're going to receive. So on the first presentation, there needs to be everything already on a slide. So every kind of step is going to be accelerated, because they're already going to find the answer to the question that they got in their mind. So I think that was one of the practice they learned. Is no such a thing like you got an idea, you need to structure your idea. It needs to have all the ramification and all the details in it. The more detail you present an idea, the most likely it's going to be to move quickly and be approved quickly. So
I like that you started with the slide. It's like the first solution is you need to learn how to do PowerPoint. and then the structure, and put a presentation that makes sense. But it is true. It's like, it is a hard thing to learn, because, you know, if you've never been trained in how to present strategy and solving solutions the way marketing people think, you just go straight to the solution, or like, here's the problem, here's the solution, and then you skip all the steps in between. And when you're working on a marketing team, it's like, okay, so here's a problem, here's some benchmark, I've done some research, here's what other companies are doing. Now you have to present that to show that, like, this is the situation. This is some feedback that I've received. I've done my research to find out what other people think of this problem, and here are the solutions, and this is why I think these solutions will work, and how much it's going to cost. And you have to put the whole picture together, which is a lot harder to do. But you probably do get your results in the end, sometimes.
Definitely. You need to present all the thinking. You can't just go there with the solution. You need to show them the thinking behind why you reach the kind of solution. Yes,
absolutely. And for Cameron, what are one of your biggest challenges, and that's something you've learned to overcome?
I can see that this is episode number 23, because this is going to be a flawless transition right here. You're so good at teeing this up, right? So I think one of the things that we've kind of shared is that there needs to be an understanding of how to communicate. And so when you're talking about, you know, how you found it funny that one of the first things that Roberta brought up was creating PowerPoints, right, to communicate exactly why, you know, programming should be pushed, you know, in a particular direction. That is communication. I'm not somebody who, you know, graduated from an MBA program and inherently speaks that same language. So there has to be an element of code switching, right? And that's something that people of color are oftentimes called to do. So it's something that I picked up the ball with pretty easily, but it took me a year or so to be able to, you know, understand that, oh wow, I have to not only, you know, be able to express my thoughts and express the you know, the ideas that I'm ideating on succinctly and in a way that these people who are directly influencing the brand's overall direction can understand, and then also I need to do it in a way that is going to essentially beat them to the punch in terms of asking or answering any questions that they may ask. So that communication became really key. Another speed bump I would also say was the work-life balance. By definition, these brand ambassadors are called to superimpose the brand on top of the life that they're naturally living. And that process takes time to acclimate to. So right out of the gate, I was pushing it really hard, you know, traveling essentially like 130 or so days out of the year. You know, that was rough on my body. It was rough on relationships. It was rough on my friendships. You know, so learning how to ease into that and make the relationship between Ardbeg and who I am as an individual more natural, right? I didn't need to push it as hard out of the gate. And that's something that I'm really conscious of. And I want, you know, brand ambassadors who are currently in the position or people who are aspiring to take on these positions to be aware of, is that it's not always about the brand. It's about you as well. You're equally as important in this relationship.
And Roberta, sorry, Cameron, go ahead. Continue.
No, I'd love to hear what you were going to ask Roberta, actually.
No, because Roberta had a similar story. Like, you told me yesterday about how when you first started.
Yeah, I think, you know, I was sharing when I started, I almost felt the pressure because you're switching from bartending to being brand ambassador. You almost need, you know, you've got this pressure that you need to show everybody that you're up to the game, that you're able to deliver. So, and it's overwhelming because you're doing like events every day, you're all day in the office, then in the evening you're going out, so you're traveling a lot. So I think like after 3 or 4 months, I almost burned myself. And I only realized because a good friend of mine, you know, actually pointed out that I looked really tired, that I wasn't looking great. And he had actually helped me to build a schedule of exercise, vitamins, and, you know, be hydrated. So there are a lot of tricks that you need to learn when you start in the job, like holding the same glass for hours without even drinking the cocktail that you're handling, having a lot of water, making sure you got your breakfast. 20-minute exercise every day, even if you don't have time. Maybe it's just some stretching. But there are all these kind of things that really help you to make it the work-life balance better. And I completely agree with you. Maintaining relationship and also having representing a brand is quite difficult. That's what I'm always saying to the younger generation when they always ask, how can I become a brand ambassador? First of all, make sure that you want to do this job, because there are a lot of things that you don't see, because we are really good with our phone on Instagram. It looks everything's shiny.
Fabulous. Yeah, exactly.
It's really shiny, but actually there is a lot of work behind. You're representing the brand 24 hours, 7 on 7. So it's really important that when you're choosing a brand, it needs to represent you. You need to share the passion, because otherwise it's not going to work. Because as you say before, you are the brand at one point. So if you don't share the same values, it's not going to work.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you do need to be building your personal brand and the brand at the same time. It's really, really important. It's important for your career. It's important for your livelihood and you do need that balance of personal life. I mean, I became a mom almost a year and a half before I became a brand. It was the weirdest career switch I could ever make, going from the marketing side to the brand side and in the street. But I just really was embracing mixology and cocktails. It was 2005 and I really wanted to get into it. And it does cause a huge strain on your relationship because you're constantly out and you don't have a predictable schedule all the time. So a lot of the advice of brand ambassadors have said on this is getting as good at your schedule as you possibly can so that you could plan around your personal life around it. Like for me, everything in my life is planned. I know my week. I schedule when I'm going to see my friends, when we're going to have family night for dinner. And I'm not even a brand ambassador anymore, but I know if I don't schedule things in, they just won't happen. So I make sure I schedule my entire everything going on, so that way it actually happens. Just planning my gym. If I don't put it in the calendar, I have gym tonight at 5:30. If I don't show up, they charge $15. So but I made sure I schedule it almost a week before, so I know exactly, and I book everything else around it. So it's really important to do that. Cameron, you look like you're gonna add to that.
Yeah, I was just gonna co-sign that, and also put out there that what I'm gonna say is super ironic because we missed that call yesterday, and it was definitely on the schedule.
True. We did not do good scheduling.
That was my bad. I'll raise my hand on that for sure. But what I was going to say is that the brand ambassador roles and positions on this side in general live somewhere in ambiguity between, hard, fast deadlines and calendars, and then also have to be really good at ad-libbing and being creative and working on the fly in less than ideal situations and scenarios.
Yeah.
So it's a really unique kind of set of skill sets that you have to put together. This essentially way to format your life, but then also live in the gray at the exact same time. Something I did.
No, it's very true.
Yesterday by missing out Carl.
No, but it happens. But it's so true. It's and actually I didn't put this as one of our questions, but it's something we haven't discussed on the show. But I think it's really important because as both of you I'm assuming have had to do some camera work for the company at some point. Have you ever do any filming, camera work, and make cocktails right? And you sometimes have to work in less than ideal circumstances, where things aren't there, the ingredients that you needed didn't show up, and I think it's important. I think for me there was 2 lessons I learned. One was when is it okay to just do whatever you got, if I'm making drinks on camera but nobody's drinking them, and as long as the ingredients I have look like the ingredients that are supposed to be there and the drink's going to be the same color, it's fine. But if I don't have the ingredients I want and I have to actually then taste things, it's going to make me look bad. So when do you become a little bit of a prima, but it's not being a prima donna, but sometimes you have to say, no, I can't, this is not ideal for me to work in the circumstances. We need to make some adjustments here. And that is not an easy thing to do, to stand up for yourself because you want to be a team player. But I do think it's something important. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Cameron.
Yeah, I think that setting your demands in any capacity in life and knowing your worth in any capacity in life is always 2 thumbs up paramount. I think that you need to be your own champion before you can do anything else, right? Whenever you fly, ironic, we're ambassadors, we do it a lot, to tell you to put your own oxygen mask on before you help anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is very applicable to what we're talking about right now, which is when you're doing tastings or live events or events that are public facing, that you need to have the right tools and assets there. And it is incumbent on you to ask for those things and make sure that you've communicated your needs effectively, for sure. And then
it's not being a prima donna. It's making sure that they look good as much as you look good. And sometimes you do. Yeah, I've burned when I've been too much of a team player. I'm a people pleaser, and I'll be a team player, and then sometimes I get screwed for it. So I've tried to learn, and I'm like, all right, they're gonna think I'm a bitch, but I don't care, because I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be looked upon as not doing her job well if I don't ask for these things and insist on them. Roberta, I don't know if you've experienced that.
Well, Cameron's answers was too perfect. Now I feel a bit like a shame. I think I almost have the inverse process. So when I started, I was really demanding. But in a sense, then, again, be used to work in a bar when you were able to manage everything from A to Z, from opening to close. I had the kind of control feeling, that everything needs to be perfect, everything needs to be organized. So in the years, I've actually learned to be a little bit more flexible, and be Italian helps me a lot to improvise. So definitely, if there are not the right ingredients, but they can look like in the photo, I'm gonna be fine. While probably 5 years ago, I would be just like, oh no, why I don't have the right ingredients. So I think it's evolving with the role and evolving, with the years, and be a little bit more flexible, and also learning to prep. So now I will send an email 1 week before the shooting asking, I'm going to need this in the date. Did it arrive? It has been organized. And then I'm going to send another email after 3 or 4 days checking, is everything there? Can I have a picture of the boxes with the liquid inside? So
picture is great. Good idea.
Because sometimes they tell you yes, but so the person they're helping during this photo shooting or video shooting, they are no expert. So for them, like a bottle of, syrup could look like a bottle of liqueur. They don't have this knowledge. So I feel like a little bit more responsible to, show me the picture, and I'm going to make sure that everything is there. So I'm going to be prepared to the shooting on a day.
No, those are great words of advice. I actually started, and I still to this day, whenever I have requests for stuff, I take pictures of it myself, because I'm like, this is what this looks like. Like even the picture of a lemon and a lime, I'm like, this is a lemon. Like, because believe it or not, in Miami, because most people in Miami speak Spanish, and if you ask for, I think it's limon, which is I'm asking for a lemon, but in their mind it's a lime, and I'm like, no, the yellow one. Like, and I ended up one time with 300, like whatever it was, like a couple 100 liters of like lemon juice, and I need lime juice, or vice versa. It was like the wrong, because they're like, no, it's lemon. I'm like, no, the green one, not the yellow, or the yellow one, not the green one. So I started learning to send pictures of every ingredient, every bottle. Like, there is no substitute. If you need a substitute, you need to ask first, because they'll just show up with whatever. Like, it's just like, here you go. And they tried, but it's not what you asked for. So yeah. Do you have anything on Cameron? Do you have any tricks that you've learned?
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of the load list. I think that was a byproduct of obviously running cocktail bars, but then also competitions, right? Doing competitions for some time, traveling into a new city where you don't know if you're going to be able to get specific ingredients or, specific barware that you may want to work with. So you bring it yourself. And, 2 days before traveling, I'm on the computer on my iPad, load list, now running through how I'm packing, things like that. So the same thing can be applied for when I'm prepping events. If I know that I'm making, if I want these 3 specific cocktails to be served, sequentially throughout a dinner, that we may be having, I'm going to send a load list of the ingredients, the specs, if there are possible replacements that could be subbed in if they can't find something. Doing that with enough lead time, so that if there are nightmares, which there usually are, that the crisis can be averted.
Yeah, I think that's great with enough lead time. You know, it's not fair to the organizers if you do wait to the last minute. It's not their fault when they can't find it. So you do have to make sure you do prep way in advance. And, you know, I used to keep master lists because I started realizing I use the same list all the time. So I would just make a master sheet and then I would edit it towards the event. So that way I wouldn't have to keep replicating the same thing. I started making masters of emails because it's like the same email and just like substitute dates. Like any shortcut I could do that would just make it easier for me to cut and paste. Like when I'm on the road and like in my notes file, I'd be like, okay, email to this organizer for this type of cut, you know, and just like cut and paste just any shortcuts I could find. This is all really great stuff. Okay, so I want to go into, you know, let's talk about that's trying to use ability. Okay, so networking, right? So this is a big thing. It's a big part of our jobs, you know, within the industry. And I really do believe, and I'm sure you guys do, your network really is your net worth in this role. The bigger your contact base is, the more value you become, not only to your own company, but if you want it in your own career, if you change jobs. But maintaining those relationships are not easy because you're traveling, right? You're a global, right? So we have social media, which does make it easier. But how do you maintain, like for yourself, do you have any methods you've learned, like after you meet somebody or you've been to a conference and like, you know, or you've been to a country or a state and you just met a bunch of new people? How do you, what are your best practices for keeping in touch with those people so that you can, you know, reach out to them next time you're in that city or country? Roberta, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Network is essential, is really important, and traveling a lot, you know, I think is one of the best part of the job. Meeting new people and having different conversations with people from different countries is a dream job. I think social media there help a lot because obviously, you know, when you're traveling, you're gonna meet people. You can send a text the day after. Thank you, you know, for having me, for the hospitality. The cocktail was great. You can take a picture of the drink or the atmosphere, sharing on the social media. Tag the bar, tag the person, and also you're able to check with people even if you're not there. You know, you can almost like stalk them on Instagram. You know, you can see if something important is happening in their life, and you can send a congratulations text, and you can celebrate with them. So this really helps to build the relationship and keep, you know, be close to these people even if you're miles away. So I think social media is definitely a huge opportunity. And also be present. So when I've got the opportunity to be with people, I like to be with people. I like to really listen, to have the genuine conversation. So I think that is important because then you value most, even if they're just few minutes over a cocktail, it means a lot.
Yeah, being present is a big one. And it's because it's not about you. It's like I try to focus. It's something I had to learn in my later years in life, that it's not about me trying to impress them. It's like just about me. That's why I love doing interviews, because it's about me learning about other people and getting to know them on a deeper level. And that generally makes you more memorable to them because you cared about them and what they had to say. Cameron, for you?
Yeah, I think in regards to this, it's really about reinvestment for me. Oftentimes I get to see, you know, some of the same faces, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And usually I'll come to their market and I'll bring something that is kind of unique or something that's strange, as a way of just saying like, hey, like I knew that I was coming back and I wanted to make sure that I got this in front of you. Oftentimes it's offering my services. A lot of times, you know, if we're speaking about like off-premise accounts, liquor stores and things like that, I'm offering my services to do live tastings to their CRM existing databases and whatnot as well. If it's about, you know, reaching bartenders and whatnot, I oftentimes will retrace my old stomping ground to the USBG and also make sure that I hit a lot of the influential bars to see a lot of my friends. You know, if I'm in a city that I maybe only make it to once or twice a year. What Roberta said about stalking them on Instagram and being present in their lives virtually from a distance, I think has immense value as well. In a digital world, we should be able to engage and interact with each other in ways that don't call for us to be present all the time. And I think that that's something we've gotten really good at in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just took this during this year. I don't know about you, but I took a lot of online courses and kind of upped my game. And I took a networking course, by a gentleman who wrote a book called Never Eat Alone. And it's all about different methodologies of networking with people and keeping up those relationships. And probably one of the key things I took away from it was, everybody has something of value to give. So you might meet within your industry or even in your company, the CEO or, some executive. And it's like, it can be intimidating. Like, do I really reach out to this person? Like, to say hi or nice meeting you. And, it was something I learned a little bit later in Diageo. Like I got to spend time with a lot of the chief executives, and which was great because a lot of them now, some of them have moved on and become other companies, and they reach out to me now, like, because I kept in contact. Like I saw that they moved, I would see on LinkedIn that they moved jobs, and I'd be like, oh my God, congratulations. It's been a long time. Love to catch up, have a coffee, because there's always something of value. I know for them, some of them it's just, Elaine, what's going on in the industry? Keep me up to date, because they're in marketing and they're, there's a CMO. They live in their house and with their wife, they don't get out as much as they would like to. So keeping on top of that, or so now I try to make it a good practice. I'm sending emails to people I've met that might be in more senior positions that work at other companies, and just say, checking in on you. I saw this happening. I know we met once at this party. I enjoyed our conversation. I remember we talked about this thing, wanted to follow up with you. And I've been amazed how many people have responded. Like, Elaine, thank you so much for reaching out. Yeah, I would love to talk with you some more. And it's something that people have taught me to, like, Elaine, yeah, like a lot of, and also senior people, also senior management, a lot of times like to be mentors as well. So they're just waiting for somebody to ask. But also, I'm sorry, at trade shows, when you meet a lot of people or when you're traveling to different cities, to your point, Roberta, like I learned to always immediately go on social media afterwards, after I send them a note or a text, and then to look them up on social media to make sure we were friends, right? So that way, at least on the bare minimum, that we're all kind of connected. And then at least once a year, at least you can wish them happy birthday if you don't see them, that's on the bare minimum, at least of doing that, because people remember that. And Cameron, I wanted to ask you, is there something ever personal? Have you brought like a book to somebody or something like that when you travel to the city?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And something I actually, right before I was thinking about value, because that was a word that you used, and that really kind of just set my mind, kind of off in a spiral there. Something that I was thinking about while we were discussing this was the fact that here in the States, obviously you have that 3-tier system. So you have shareholders. As an ambassador, you have shareholders within your own company, at the distributor, and then also out in the field as well.
Yep.
So you have to understand what value means to each of these shareholders.
Absolutely.
And once you understand that and how to provide that value for them, and they see you as a valuable asset and resource, that is essentially increasing your how the network, how your network feels about you, and just increasing your value as well. So that was something I wanted to get out there because I was sitting on it for a second. But then in terms of
I love it.
Things that are personal, like personal items, absolutely. Books that I'm reading, I've absolutely bought. There's, I don't think I have one in here. Dang, there is an Ardbeg book that I've had a few of them signed by Dr. Bill Lumsden as like personal tokens of gratitude to be able to provide for some of the people that really, I guess, bolster the business, but then also do right by me as an ambassador at the same time.
No, which is great. I think bringing in presidents, and I love the shareholder thing because it is so important. As a brand ambassador, you have, the buyers in the field, the bartenders, and you have the distributor and the sales reps, and then you actually have your brand people. And it's really, really important, as you grow in your role, to really get to know people on a different level, to take them out for a dinner, or a lunch, and really get to understand what their role is, so you can understand and what their goals are. So you're like, now I know how I can help this person, like what's information I can provide them in the field. Exactly, the golden rule of the golden circle. Thank you, Andy. No, it's such an important lesson to know that. So it's like, okay, so your sales reps are not just like people you need to be like, oh, I only have to deal with them when I'm like working to work with. No, it's like there could be your most valuable assets to achieving your own goals. Any market or any city you're going to. And if they see you bringing value to them, like it could be education, training. I'm a great salesperson, presentation. I'm going to introduce you to some of the better buyers. You might not have the relationship, whatever it may be. And bringing that to the table is such a great lesson. Thank you for that. And I asked about the presents because I always laugh because Philip my husband I always thought he was really good. He'll travel, he'll come home after being away, and I'll see him going to the post office and he's like wrapping different things. And he's like, oh, I was meeting with this person and he mentioned this book. So I bought this book, and somebody else mentioned this bottle or something. And he'll be at the post office. He just remembers all of that, and he sends it all out all the time. They know my first name in the post office. He's there so often mailing people stuff all the time. I'm like, wow, that's really good. Like, I'm always impressed by it, like how much he remembers what people just mentioned in a conversation. So he'll pick it up for them. All right, so let's get into, so we talked about working globally. Cameron, I do want to talk about, because one of the things I didn't have a chance to talk to you about is that you are very focused around the conversation of diversity within the single malt Scotch. So I wanted to hear, what are your views of diversity within the industry, especially in the Scotch world? And then what are you doing? I know you're using your platform to make changes and educate others. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, historically, Scotland is one of the least melanated countries on the planet, but that doesn't mean that the stories of heavily melanated people and also women don't run deeply in Scotland's heritage. Scotland was a cultural melting pot. It is one of the most unique places in the world, and in my opinion, I think that the port towns of Scotland historically have influenced trade around the world monumentally, and as a result, Scotch whiskey blossomed because of Scotland's position in global commerce, right? And so that's a story that people from countries outside of Scotland and people that have historically been written out of the story of Scotch whiskey can all be galvanized by, that can all celebrate that story, because it's more than just people of Nordic or Gaelic heritage. It's the story of all of us, right?
Right.
So I find beauty in that story, and I love telling it. And what I think that does is it elevates the category, and at the same time welcomes in new consumers that may have not seen themselves represented in it. And that is kind of the overarching theme of what I hope to accomplish as, Scotch whiskey's lone African-American brand ambassador.
Well, yeah. Well, I was gonna say, have you met Samara Davis?
Yes, absolutely.
From the Black Bourbon Society. She's
huge fan.
I love her. She's a force of nature, and she said something similar. She said within bourbon, she's like the marketing, within marketing, they weren't marketing to my community at all. So I know she works with organizations and companies to teach them how to market differently, because they were doing it all wrong. They had assumptions, as many people do, in their head that they were making, and it was completely off basis. So does Ardbeg, with Ardbeg, is there any specific programming you get to do yet, or is it something you're working on?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've done work with the Black Bourbon Society. Actually, Samara created a set of cocktails for Ardbeg over the summer, which were absolutely incredible. But then the Glenmorangie Company, which is the parent company to Ardbeg, put out some wonderful new programming and positioning for the brands. That actually even Becky Paskins, who's a wonderful writer in the whiskey scope, and just in all facets as well. She said she was actually moved to tears by it. It is very much so. I guess it pushes the bounds of what Scotch whiskey marketing has been. The inclusion of a lot more people of color, a lot more women, and also making it a much more kind of bright and bold space. Juxtaposes the thought that whiskey needs to be sipped in this dark room by gnarly old men with excess income. Like, that's not what whiskey is at all.
No, No, and I'm glad for that. As a woman who drinks whiskey, I'm happy to hear that as well. All right, Roberta, you also have a platform, and you mentioned it before about health and wellness is something that you guys cared about, that you do care about deeply. I think we all do, but I know this is something that really you had your own stories with it. So why is it important for you, and how are you using your platform to help other people within the industry?
I think it's all based on personal experience. We all been working as a bartender. We know what it means having too many drinks, be late until late in the night, be up and then wake up in the morning. And then this kind of cycle that never breaks, because then when you're off, you're going to do the same things. You're going to meet with your friends. You're going to have some drinks. You're going to have something to eat. And you never really find a way to recover completely. And because I was struggling myself to trying to find a balance. And when I started to find a balance, I found myself. And I've seen the benefits. For me, it was really important to share this message with my friends first, and likely, a lot of my friends, they're bartenders, and then with the community. So we started the Martini Racing Ciclismo program to, support the well-being of the bartenders. We want a way to create a community around an occasion that wasn't a drink. So something that was more on a personal life. Being bartending is one of the worst job for your body, because of the hours that you do. You're standing all the time. You're not eating well. You don't rest. You've got like so many things that are against you. Then when you've got the time, you really need to look after yourself. And bartenders, they look after the guests, but no one is looking after them. Yeah. So for me, it was like, well, let's find a way to keep meeting up and having good time with friends and other bartenders, but doing something as well for our body. And cycling is something that's accessible to everybody. Is quite easy. Anyone can jump on a bike and go for a ride. And what it really amazed me was the response of the trade. They love the program. Some of the people now, they buy a bike and they're going to work with a bike. So you're really making a difference in their life, and also the community. I remember one of the feedback from a young bartender here in London a couple of years ago. It was like, doing a spinning class with Eric Lawrence, in the same room. And I just started my career. Like that for me was like my eureka moment of the year. And you don't think about, because we are so spoiled. We are so used to go around with these big names that we don't realize that sometimes small things that can make it different for a younger person. So for me, like trying to push the well-being on the bartenders and make sure that they're looking after themselves before looking after the guests is really important. So
no, I think that's great. So how does somebody join the bike club? So it's just like, hey, we're all going to meet up and grab a bike, rent a bike, or how does it work?
So we activate in different way around different countries. It's a young program because we only started 3 years ago, and then there was the 2020 in the middle. So it's almost like it didn't count.
Yeah.
And everything is on hold because we still have a lot of restriction in Europe. But we did some indoor cycling classes in UK and some of the countries. Like, we were meeting every Tuesday. So bartenders were coming for a spin in between 2 or 3 o'clock before going for a shift. We organized some countryside ride. We did some, weekend long. And also we did once a year, we were doing La Classica. There was this big event with 50 bartenders all around the world, and we were traveling different parts of Italy. Last time was into 2019 when we rode from Florence to Rome for the Roma Bar Show. Wow. So you still bring the community together, but at the same time, you giving them a goal and a challenge, because you can't ride 100 kilometers if you don't train. So it was like, yeah, you need to come every Tuesday, you need to stick to it. It's going to be painful, but then you're going to see the benefit. And they do.
That's amazing. I think that's such a great idea. I'm assuming there must be some Martini Rossi bikes out there.
Yeah, there are few. Actually, through the program, because you need to incentive people, because it's not easy, the mind shifting from I'm just gonna go out and drink and I'm gonna actually, sweat on a bike. You need to give some prizes. So we gave like some swap from the caps, water bottle, and then one of the ultimate prize was a Martini Ciclismo bike. You had to commit to some kilometers during the months. So the program is on hold. I'm working on the new stage. I really wanted to make it even stronger and reach more people. So this is what I'm really, working hard at the moment, because I think there is a value there I see personally on myself, and I want to share this with the rest of the community.
Oh yeah, and everybody's probably just dying to get outside as well. Like anything that we could do together, and then also to be outside and have fun, it's probably something that would really go over really, really well. Cameron, I actually want to touch back on something you said before. It's about entering competitions, because it's something I talk about. I've never done it because I never worked behind a bar that was noteworthy enough for anybody to care if I entered a competition. My biggest claim to fame, because I was the head mixologist for Diageo, they definitely did not want me entering their competition since I worked in their brand. I couldn't enter my own when competition became a thing. But I do believe in them because building, as we talked about when we first started, building our personal brand along with the brand is extremely important to your career. But when you're a bartender, in order to get noticed by brands, I do think entering competitions is such a great way to do that. And Roberta, I don't know if you've also entered competitions as well. But Cameron, I want to start with you. Like, if why did you start entering competitions? And how did it help your career?
Yeah, not only is it a great way to get noticed by brands, but I think it's also great on the job training as well, because you have to get comfortable speaking about about brands' identities. You have to dive into research to understand, the socioeconomic climate around the brand. From its point of inception, you have to understand its points of production, all of these different things. And then also you have to work on essentially presentation skills at the exact same time, right?
Yes.
In a live fire scenario.
So hold on, grabbing my stand.
I think that's a wonderful way to train your mind to think like a brand ambassador. So that was one reason. The other reason I got into competitions is because I'm like super competitive. I played college basketball. I've always loved a challenge, not necessarily competing with other people, but seeing how close to perfect I can be. And so that for me became a happy pursuit. I loved entering competitions and learning everything I could about the spirit. And then also how to use it, and then also how to communicate, its vision through my lens.
I think that's really cool, because I don't think I've had anybody ever described this that way, as a way to understand the brand. Or do you feel, in my mind, I know a lot of people when they enter competitions don't do as much research as you just described, and that's probably why they don't win.
Yeah.
Meaning like research in the company, where they come from, all this stuff like that. How did you know to do that? Was that just like your natural, like, all right, this is what I need to do? Or was it a request within the competition, like you need to be able to present all this information?
No, I think a lot of these competitions ask you to become storytellers, right? And spirits, cocktails, these are all forms of nonverbal communication. They tell stories, right? So you have to understand how that spirit, or how the family that started that spirit, wants their story communicated, and then also how to weave that story into something that is of your own making at the same time, right? And so that became a really beautiful passion of mine, for sure.
No, and I think it's a great practice, to your point about being a better presenter, because being a great presenter, you do need to be a good storyteller. You need to take people on that journey with you, so they get involved. And actually, I think that actually will lead us to right to my next question, which is basically, and I'm going to skip over one and go back to it, but I think we'll talk about being a presenter, right? So, because it's a huge part about being giving great presentations is a huge part of being a brand ambassador. So, Roberta, I'll start with you, because I know we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Like, what were some of the mistakes you made in the beginning of your career when you started, making presentations, and what have you done now to adjust to be a better presenter?
I love this question. So I think my mistake at the beginning was to follow someone else's steps. You see this kind of a big name in our industry, the ambassador that you really look at, and you almost believe that you need to be them. So you're following what they do, how they talk, but that wasn't my style, and it comes out. It's almost the same when you do the presentation, or you need to own the content. So for me, it was really important to understand what I was passionate about, which story I wanted to tell. I'm a geeky bartender, so I'm more interested in really talking details about the production, ingredients, extraction, all these kind of things, more than talking about the history of the cocktail, because this is not something that belong. And when I talk about something I'm passionate, I start to use my hand, I'm smiling, I bring a different energy in the room. So for me, it was really important, first of all, to understand how to structure a presentation. Again, we're talking a PowerPoint again. Be effective, more like images than words, and trying to find the energy to own the room, trying to speak the same language, trying to learn. So I think until now, I've never done the same presentation twice. There is always something, even if they're standard, there's always something that you're gonna add or you're gonna remove because you know that your audience is different.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're gonna add a joke about the bar where you're presenting because you know that you're gonna make the team feel part of it. So I think owning the content is the most important things and make a huge difference in the delivery. And as soon that you understand that, you're becoming a better presenter. You feel more comfortable because you know what you're going to talk about. You're not feel scared about forgetting anything. I never got a script to follow. It's always it's coming from my heart. It's everything from my heart. It's not from my mind. And then you learn that you can apply the same things when you're presenting brand strategy or brand ideas. And then you're going to own the room, you're going to, making your marketing team believe in you, even if they might not understand the idea completely because they feel the passion. So, yeah.
No, those some really, really, really great points. I wish I knew that when I first started as well, because that it would have saved me some really hard moments when you're trying to present somebody else's slides or saying information you're just not comfortable talking about because you might not understand what it means. That's one of the worst. It's like you're presenting technical. I'm like, I don't even understand what any of these things that I'm saying to you. And they can tell. They can so tell, that it's not from you. And the passion. I once had somebody say to me, they're like, "Where's Elaine?" I'm like, "What?" They're like, "You're not being you. You usually are funny. You joke around." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is not anything I ever say in my entire life. So if I can change the words to be me, then you'll get me. But if I have to say this, I'm like, you're just going to get whatever this is, because it's really hard to bring myself to the table saying these words because I would never say them out loud ever." So that is a big one. Cameron, for you?
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna have to echo that, and I was laughing over here because I'm reliving nightmare horror stories of when I first started, going to whiskey festivals and events that were being thrown by some of our larger off-premise partner accounts. In my first year as our national ambassador, these folks are used to getting David Blackmore, our global ambassador for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg, or they're used to getting Dr. Bill, who's, for all intents and purposes, the most famed whiskey master and whiskey maker in the world. And so then comes me, new ambassador on the scene, and they're like, well, who is this guy? And so I'm trying to live in the footsteps of giants and present content in a way that they would have presented that's not true to who I am as an individual, right? And so it mutes the passion. And so when someone is like, "Where is Elaine?" That echoes with me because I felt lost for the first almost full calendar year of doing my own job, because it didn't feel like I was doing it the way that I should be doing it, right? And it took some time to ease into that and find my own confidence in presenting, because Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, oftentimes we're called into giving large presentations at whiskey festivals with vintage whiskeys and whatnot. So the demographic that we oftentimes are speaking to may not have been comfortable with people that may look like me, or even women giving these presentations. And so it behooves us to give them in a way that is as natural to ourselves, so that it forces them to be comfortable, because we're not going anywhere, right? And so for me, that was something that in year 2 I became really good at, was my presentation skills. And finding ways to communicate my passion for the brands in ways that are true to myself as well.
No, I think that's really, and I think we've all been there, and I think those are great words of advice, because you don't know you have the permission to do it. I think that's the biggest thing. You're, at least that was for me. Like I didn't know I could change the slides. I didn't know I could make it my own. Like I just figured like I just have to do what somebody else. Like this is what they gave me, so this is what I have to present. And not until you get more confident, you're like, and a lot of times you realize also, at least for me, I realized I'm a bigger expert in this topic than the person who actually gave me the slides, because they're the marketing person and they really don't know this information either. They couldn't present it because they don't know. So me changing it won't make a difference to them, because as long as I get like the 3 key things that they want to make sure gets said, and everything else, as long as it's not too far off course, as long as it comes out with passion and people are entertained, and they're like, that's the most important thing. Are people entertained? Do they feel connected to you? Daniel Jones from Angostura said it best to me. I love him. I love watching him present. Him and Ian Burrell are 2 of my favorites. And they both say to me, they said, Elaine, it's about presenting with, find the thing about the brand that you connect with. And I think, Roberta, you said that the thing that you connect with. And then a lot of times they just talk about their love of the product. They were both rum ambassadors, and they said, our love of the product, it's not about, or the category is what we present. Not like, we don't talk about, get into technical details about how stills work or the different temperatures. He's like, because most people don't give a shit about that. They just want to see your passion and why they should be drinking rum and why they should love your product as much as you do. So great, really, really great words of advice.
If I can, I'd love
to
add
go for it.
That well, because there's an opportunity to marry the production elements, that Roberta and I both absolutely love geeking out with. You said it so well, like nerdy, geeky bartenders, right? So when I first started and I was speaking with Dr. Bill and Jillian McDonald, who are pieces of our whiskey creation team, they'd use words like petrichor, right? Phenolic compounds, right? And so I had to, I'm not somebody who grew up or graduated with a degree in organic science or chemistry, right? Mm-hmm. So, making that my own was really important, right? So expressing, like, oh, well, what is a phenolic compound, right? Or what is petrichor, right? And I'm like, oh, well, for me as somebody who grew up in Seattle, that becomes relevant because it rains here a lot, even during the spring. So when the ground is a little bit warmer and that first spring rain starts to hit, that smell that you're smelling, that aromatic, that is petrichor. So when we move into tasting a whiskey, then it's like, I can identify that because I grew up with that, right? That's home for me, right? So marrying the production elements to real world applications, I think is another great way for ambassadors to communicate their love for the brand.
I think that is a great point. I used to refer to fermentation. I used to explain it. I was like, how many of you have had a roommate? And people are like, I was like, how many of you had a disgusting roommate who loved to leave things like sitting for a while, or like the orange juice container that's been in your refrigerator for too long? And I was like, you take a drink out of it and it's bubbling. It's starting to fizz. I'm like, that's fermentation. Like, like there's been yeast in the air. It's already eating the sugar. It's letting off carbon dioxide. They're like, oh, I'm like, I wouldn't recommend drinking it, but just giving them some sort of reference point. And I think it helps. And I Cameron, I saw your educate, like I went and got my WSET level 3 and the bar 5 and courses like that. When you get to understand things at a much deeper level, it allows you to then able to explain them on a much simpler level.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it does help you. So eventually you get to that level where it's like, the more education you get, then the easier it is to break it down into more relatable terms, like the smell of the grass. And I think that's a really great component. Roberta, did you have something to add to that? I look like you had something to say.
I think your example, they were great. And I think we all find it, like I explained maceration, comparing to brewing a cup of tea. So I think we all learned during these years some tricks to explain the really difficult concept. But that's the beauty, because the more that you learn, and as Cameron, that you were saying, like it's really important for us to have a lot of knowledge, because as more that you know, the better you are in explaining in a simple way. Because if you don't know the concept, you're just gonna repeat words. So it's not gonna be the
And
same.
for me, I have to keep going back and because I don't have to, because of my job now where I do a lot more on-trade consulting for brands and a lot of work with brand, but I don't have to do as much of the knowledge I used to. Like, I don't have to give as many tequila presentations or vodka or gin presentations. So I'm constantly going back and rereading all my WSET knowledge because I need to refresh one. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's like it goes out and being able to explain it. So I constantly find myself when somebody's like, all right, can you do a tequila presentation and you do a masterclass? I'm like, no problem. And I'm like, I have to dig out all the way. I'm like, I know it's in my head. I just have to go back through it. So I have all the concepts and like refresh myself because it's like, yeah. So it's a constant, you're just constantly learning. You're always going through the process and breaking it down for other people and making it easier for them. Really great points. All right. So let's talk about also, to be a great brand, I always think, you need to keep progressing in your career. So I think understanding, and I've had this conversation with a few people because not everybody has the benefit of this, which is understanding the long-term plans of the brand. Because when you first become a brand ambassador, you don't know that this is something you should be doing, and you might not know to ask to be in that room. So, Roberta, I'll start with you because then we talked a little bit about this yesterday. It's like, why does it benefit you to understand the big picture for your brand? And how do you get yourself in those meetings? Like, how do you become part of that process?
Wow, this is the question. I think there are a couple of points. So it's important to say then still today, a lot of companies, they don't really understand which one are the limits of an ambassador. Their role and responsibility, they're still kind of vague. So you can play with it, and making the most out of it. Because obviously, if it's not clear for them where your limit is arriving, you can stretch your role, your responsibilities. And that's what I did. So for me, it was really important. Again, being geeky, you're always trying to understand the more you can about everything. You need to understand what is behind, all the mechanics, how they work. So for me, it was the same when I approached the brand. I need to understand how they were building the brand strategy, why they were deciding for that product instead of that one, why they were deciding the words to be put on the label. And as to be part of the conversation, you making yourself a role, but at the same time you're showing the brand or your team, then you can add some value because you've got a different background, you're not a marketer, and you've got the experience of the field. And in my career, I found that was really helpful. And today they really value my point of difference because they know, my bosses always say, you are one of the person that is sitting on the room and has completely different point of view. And sometimes you've got this crazy idea, but when we realize they might not be so crazy, but we will never have them because we are structured to think in a certain way, following a certain path that you don't have it because you're coming from a different background. So I think it's really important for an ambassador to try to understand what role that they want to play, because you can still do your, let's say, easier job, so doing just educational training and going visit accounts, or you can make yourself a little bit like more valuable inside of the company and make sure that you're sitting at the table. And I see the difference when you've got an ambassador sitting at a table with the marketing team, from a global level to a national level, you really bring a different point of view. So it's extremely important, and also it makes you less frustrated about things when they don't happen, or things then they're rejected. Because if you got a bigger picture, you realize that maybe your idea, it was good, but isn't great, or it's not gonna have the length to bring the brand the way it wants to arrive. By understanding that, you can bring your plan, your educational, or your platform to actually reach the same goal, and then you're working together. And that's where the things that really happen. Otherwise, you just a piece of the puzzle, you're a silo. They're going to let you do whatever you want. You're going to do your events, you're going to do your educational pieces, but you're not making a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Cameron, you were clapping.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I really want to add anything to that. I just probably encourage people to go back and watch that last minute and a half again right there, 'cause that was absolutely perfect. Yeah, you absolutely communicated everything that was asked in that question. There's
You're so kind.
so much value in asking to be in the rooms where where these decisions are being made. You may not have the loudest voice in the room, but at least you're there for visibility, and you can start to understand how the map that the brand whether that's at a global level or at depending on what market you're representing, how that roadmap may affect you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Asking to be in that room is always incredibly important, because a lot of times your KPIs can also be aligned to brands' aspirational growth, or things that they're ideating on. But go back and
Yeah.
listen to what Roberta just said, because that was
No, it was really, really, both of you said, and you added to it. It is something really important, because, as you said, Roberta, I'm going to expand on the frustration, because it is frustrating when you have your own vision for the brand, you have ideas, and you're in the field and you're hearing things, and you're like, well, and you see other brands doing, you're like, we should be doing this. And if you're not in that room, you don't understand why they're taking the direction that they are, and you don't see the bigger picture, and then you just get angry and you feel like, I'm just out here alone and I'm doing my job, and like the company's doing something completely different, but I'm doing this and nobody can think this is valuable. You're not connecting. So it's like, by asking to be in that room and understanding their bigger picture, then you can present your ideas back to them and say, this is what I'm hearing out in the field. You might want to add this to whatever you're doing, or think about it, expand on it. And this is how, my thoughts of how I see your goals. So this is how I think, based on what I'm hearing in the field, we can work together to connect with the trade and also achieve your goals, and I can achieve mine. But if you're not in that room and asking to be in that room, and I say to brand managers, bring the brand ambassadors in the room. And brand ambassadors, whoever's like, don't talk in the beginning, just learn, just sit quiet. Nobody's expecting you to say anything until you've been doing the job for a little bit. It's okay not to say anything. I mean, you can, but for right now, it's just about learning, listening, and asking questions like, why was that decision made? Because I think you understand when you start to understand when budgets are made, when the fiscal year is ending. So you understand how to use your own budget and how to work within the system. Also a big thing. So really, really important. But yeah, Roberta, to your point, Cameron, I couldn't have said it any better than Roberta.
Oh, you're so kind.
No, this is all great stuff. Okay, so just a little time. I was gonna say, you're both mixologists. You both have that background, and there are definitely challenges, especially if you're the geeky bartender and you're now making brands, cocktails for the company and the brand to be used by distributors and sales reps. So give me some of the challenges you might have faced, within your company, and then what you've done to overcome them. The things you've learned. I don't know who wants to start. Cameron, Roberta. Cameron,
please.
All right, I'll jump on it.
All right.
I think the challenge for me is pretty apparent. That heavily peated whiskeys, that first, single malt has never really played in the space of cocktails. Historically, hasn't been embraced by bartenders for whatever reason. Nobody's fault, but we should be drinking a lot more single malt, because the flavors are incredibly complex and also allow you to paint a beautiful tapestry with all the flavors that are inherent. And inside of that, heavily peated whiskeys are even farther away from that cocktail world generally. But one of the things I've absolutely found a lot of success in is educating people to what I believe is the most complex whiskey being produced from any Scottish distillery, and that is Ardbeg Tenure, the flagship whiskey. Mm-hmm. In that, I use that as a reference point for bartenders, because you can kind of break it out like this codex and see all of these different avenues that bartenders and geeky bars can really start to utilize to paint really vivid images in terms of the liquid libations that they're creating. So the best weapon that that we've engaged the on-trade with in terms of like one flagship cocktail would actually be the Ardbeg Daiquiri. And I know it's insane, but by design, it actually works really well. little bit of brand education hat going on right there, but
yeah, you go brand plug. Well done.
Is Ardbeg is the only peated whiskey distillery that's producing a spirit that's over 45 parts per million in terms of its phenolic content, that also uses a purifier. So Ardbeg is this weird complex whiskey that's heavily peated. The actual body of the whiskey is actually incredibly light and very floral. And mainly I pick out like white flower, a lot of gentian, and a lot of like apples, like green apple skin.
Right.
So right there, I've just, pushed this heavily peated whiskey in a direction where I want to make light, floral, even citrus laden cocktails, not things that are deep, dark, and ominous. So it's kind of juxtaposing the way that bartenders have historically thought about the space that is peated whiskey by offering them something that is so diametrically just different, right? So the Ardbeg daiquiri and also the Pitya Colada.
I like it, but also for you, it's like, I'm assuming I know I want to try the Pitya Colada. That sounds as somebody who works for a rum company, I'm like, all right, there's a way we can do like, a split base, we'll make it we'll put it together.
Absolutely.
Never know. I love being able to coordinate with other brands, and like I have brand ambassador friends here who live in New York City, and they're all part-time brand ambassadors, and they all travel together in packs to like different accounts, so that way they can support accounts together. But they also approach the buyers together, and they do split-based cocktails. Like sometimes they have 3 brands, and they're able to make a cocktail with all 3 brands that they present to accounts, and they're all small brands, so they all support together. So it's a bigger support combined, and it's just completely different companies. It's very awesome. Sorry, it's off the topic, but yeah, just something I always found really, really fascinating. I was gonna say, but also for you, like trying to do you have to work with the distributor and sales reps to get it, hey, how it's positioned on the menu? Is there a signature serve? Like, I know that can be frustrating, like how it's supposed to be out there, and how they present it to accounts. Is that something you have to do on your job, help educate people on that, like, how it should be described, how it should be served?
Absolutely, 100%. And I love when our distributing partners utilize me as a resource to educate accounts as well, especially ones that may be burgeoning whiskey hotspots, right? Or even cocktail hotspots. Educating the accounts as to the brand's positioning, how they want to be communicated about, and how that can be seamlessly integrated into what they're already doing. Those are easy wins. So I absolutely love when our distributing partners kind of plug and play me in that regard as well.
I think you probably do it well. And Roberta, for you, I know it's a big part of your job is creating cocktail strategies, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about that and the frustration, things you've learned.
Oh, there are many things. So as a geeky bartender, I used to infuse a whiskey and seaweed from Scotland. So when you're going to work for a brand where you need to find a little bit more vanilla on your cocktail strategy, is slightly different. I think there are 2 main challenges. One is ego, because when you're creating drinks, especially for PR during festival season, they ask you for a cocktail to go on a magazine, and then is putting your ego aside and trying to create a cocktail that consumers they're gonna love. And most of the time, it's gonna be a chocolate Negroni or a spiced cinnamon hot punch with Fiero. I think the wildest things that they did was a twist on the 20th century using Martini Ambrato on it. So you really need to put your ego on the side and think about what consumers they're really gonna love and they're gonna like it. So that was the first challenge. The second one is working with a global strategy. That is a completely different story. Because when we're launching a product, I'm responsible to develop the drink strategy. And then you need to that means doing a lot of inside research, consumer research, is trying to put together the insight from the consumer research and the experience in the field. Because as Cameron probably knows already, most of the time when consumers ask you for a flavor or for a cocktail, they don't really know how to describe it. They might ask for a sour, but in reality, they want something sweet. So having this knowledge really helps me to translate the data in the side research to real life explanation. And then also on top of that, you need to try to understand the trends of the cocktail all around the world, because obviously they need to work in different countries. For Martini, the biggest, the most important countries at the moment are US, Russia, all Europe, Spain, Italy. So you need to make a cocktail that's going to work for all of these countries. And obviously there needs to be a kind of flavor that is interesting enough, but not so strange is going to put people off. At the same time, I feel a bit kind of, I'm cheating when I'm making drinks, because even when I do like a martini and tonic, the drinks, they're quite complex in themselves. And I'm always trying to explain, people, when you think about the explanation of cocktails, what is a cocktail? Is a bitter, sugar, alcohol, and herbs. What is a vermouth? What is a bitter liquor? Sugar, alcohol, herbs, and bitter. So it's a little bit like cheating, because you already got a bottle in the cocktail, so you can just add some soda and light tonic, and you're making a drink that is refreshing and nice, but then you still have a lot of challenging. Even when you need to decide which kind of flavor tonic are we going to use, you might going to fall in love with one, and you then realize is only available in UK and Norway, and then you don't have it in South America. So that is the biggest challenge in trying to find the drink strategy then fits the purpose, that is interesting enough, and is available all around the world.
I'm going to tell you, no, I think that's great advice. It is very difficult. For me, it was more about, and Cameron, I'm sure you've faced this in your own. Sometimes it's also about finding the drink that with the ingredients. United States, it's like, are they common everywhere? Like, I live in New York City. When you live in big cities, there are definitely spirits and modifiers that you have access to that not every state is not as popular everywhere else. That's changing as the cocktail scene has grown so much, but still, it's like, I still get pushback. I have to make drinks for Campari rum. I'm the part-time global brand ambassador, myself and Julie Reiner. And, we'll use certain brands, and then I'll get a pushback like, so that brand's only available in New York, or, or can you only use the brands that the distributor it works with? Because we're with this distributor, so you have to, change, whatever, which makes sense. Those are all things you need to consider. You always think, I wish you told me that before I made my drinks the way I did, but now I have to do it over. But I have a funny story to tell you, Roberta. So you said Russia, and I'll never forget the first time I went to Russia, and I ordered a martini. Yeah, I got a glass of martini. I got the vermouth. I was like, I literally split it out, like, because it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting a vodka martini. Being in Russia, I was like, I will have a vodka martini. And I didn't say, vodka martini. I was very young then, my first time I went, so I was a little more inexperienced about drinks. It was probably like 98, 1998, 99, where the drinks were not, or maybe early 2000s. And I got a glass of vermouth. I was like, what is this? And why are you serving it to me in a martini glass? And then I found out, it's like, well, in Russia, martini is martini Rossi vermouth. So that's what you ask for, and that's what you get.
Yes, it's an educational moment for me now, because actually, in Europe there is a trademark on martini. When you're ordering a martini, you're actually ordering the martini, the brand. Otherwise, you will need to state like a gin martini cocktail or vodka martini cocktail. I love Russia. They love martini. When I go there, it's always like a dream.
They really do. They really do. They embrace it full on. All right, so these have been such great stories, such great information. Cameron, since we didn't have our preliminary talk, is there anything something you just feel like, there's some things I've learned about being a brand ambassador? I don't want to put you in the spot. You're like, no, Elaine, we covered it all. Or like, hey, there's some stuff I'm working on that I'd love everybody to know. I don't know if you have any plans this year for when you get out into the marketplace, that some platform that you're working on that I don't know about.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm very excited to get back to travel here relatively soon. But before I do that, we do actually have the most important calendar date, of the year for the brand Ardbeg. It's coming up this June 5th. Is actually Ardbeg Day.
Really?
Ardbeg Day is a wonderful celebration of all things Islay. We have some wonderful content that has been created by the team over in Scotland, as well as myself. I recorded a pretty fun cocktail video that will be airing on Ardbeg Day as well. So stay tuned. Actually, if whoever's watching, please actually go follow myself, Ardbeg Cam, on social media, and then also follow Ardbeg USA. That's where you can actually find out a lot of the information about what's going on Ardbeg Day, which is sure to be
cool.
An absolute hit.
I'm gonna make sure I follow you. I don't follow Ardbeg, so I'm gonna have to follow Ardbeg. And Roberta, now that the market's opening up, like, what's your first country? Like, I know you guys are still behind, but like, do you have plans to be traveling in the next couple of months? Maybe, fingers crossed.
I still don't know. We're trying to plan a trip in US as soon as possible. My first trip, I think, it will be at Casa Martini in Pessione. We did a big refurbishment last year, so we created different tour for vermouth and sparkling wines, and it's beautiful. But we actually opened before the COVID, so it's a beautiful place that no one visit yet. So I really hope to be able to travel there quite soon and see the team again and all the Italian community. And then, of course, the first trade show. I miss trade show. I would never say
what
that
is the
before.
first trade show? Which trade show?
I still don't know which one is going ahead live,
BCB.
because at the moment BCB is going to be live.
Yep, they've officially announced that they are going live. I mean, I know they're having the one here in Brooklyn, but they just officially announced the one in Berlin. So they are going live, and also Kiev's going ahead in Ukraine, and one other one. Yeah, so there are definitely some ones that are opening up, which is very, very exciting. So yeah,
I'm hoping for Greece.
Yeah, me too. I went to Greece bar. If you've never been, Cameron, the Athens Bar Show. The Athens Bar Show, Roberta?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I got to go, and actually, that's where Roberta and I met briefly in Athens 2 years ago. It's a great show. Really small, but really, really good. Well, to you and Roberta, when you're coming to America, I hope you come to New York so we can go out for some drinks. And Cam, if you're ever here in New York City, I hope you'll look me up. This will just, this broadcast, for those who will stay on the Facebook for about 2 weeks. And then it also goes on a YouTube channel as well. So, which stays up there permanently. So, and I'll probably take a few clips of this and put it on Instagram, because there's some great moments. But for the two, it was really, really great. This is a fun interview. So lovely to get to know two of you a bit more. Cameron, one of these days, we're going to have a little bit more of a time to get to catch up.
Let's do it. Put it on the calendar. Let's do it.
I'll put it on the calendar. I won't reschedule it. I might reschedule the first time. But so thank you again, both of you. And have a great evening, Roberta. And Cameron, have a great day.
All right, cheers.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure conversation. Thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome. Bye.
Ciao.
That was great. Thank you.